All right, there's been quite a lot that has been said, especially around this Expropriation Act. And you saw a little earlier on, the Democratic Alliance is taking this matter to court. They've certainly not minced their words on how the party feels about this particular act. Let's now speak to Karabo Khakhau, who's the DA's spokesperson. Good afternoon to you, Karabo, and thank you so much for your time. You're asking the court to nullify the act in its current form, and we know that this, in fact, has been one of your party's red line issues. Perhaps let's start there.
Good afternoon, Ozbongi. Good afternoon, South Africa. Thank you for having me. Well, starting there, it's true. The Democratic Alliance remains committed to a constitutional democracy. That means you cannot have any law placed at the foot of South Africans that could be easily used as a political football or manipulation tool. And we've, in our assessments through our lawyers of what the Expropriation Act seeks to do, we've come to the clear conclusion that it seeks to open up the act for political manipulation. And we've seen this, one, in the broad outlining of cases of expropriation without compensation there. That is an open-ended list that can at either day be opened up to the interpretation of a political principle. And this is not what we want. And even if it was the Democratic Alliance was going to be in government forever at the helm of the department that is responsible for rolling this out, we too do not want to be responsible for temptation of a political manipulation. Acts of South Africa should be watertight and free of political manipulation. But you'd also remember, Ozbongi, that from the onset in our communication on this act, we've also outlined two issues that are a problem here. One, the procedural flaw that we've identified in passing the bill, in the Bill Then Bill Now Act in the NCOP, where we have 3 of the 7 provinces that voted in favor of the act that did not have negotiating mandates that pulled through there. The principle of negotiating mandates is very clear. In order for any province to come and vote in favor of or against an act or a bill, they need to have held their respective legislature sittings. We know that Gauteng, the Eastern Cape, and Limpopo did not do this, and these are the points of contention that we have. They're questioning the 7 out of 9 majority vote, which in fact tallies to 4 out of 7. But also the second problem, as far as constitutional substance is concerned, is that you cannot have any act that has any contradiction within itself on the process to be followed for rolling out the same act. It renders the act confused. It renders it useless altogether. And these are the things that we want to have corrected, and it must be thrown out altogether. It should be nullified. So, and what must be clear, Ozbongi, here is that the Democratic Alliance, by saying no to the Expropriation Act, is in no way saying no to redress. We're not saying no to healing the injustices of the past, and we're not saying no to Section 25 of the Constitution. In fact, the DA has been, as a party pro a constitutional democracy, have always been pro Section 25 of the Constitution. And in cases where we have been able to practice this, in the Western Cape, where we govern with an outright majority, for example, we have an 83% success rate of land reform cases in the Western Cape. This is something that no other ANC governed province can be able to claim. So It is clear here that the contestation is not Section 25, but an inconsistency with Section 25, which is the Expropriation Act.
So, Karabo, a couple of questions arise from what you just said, right? Let's start with the first one. You talk about these procedural issues. Why did you not take this up with the courts earlier on?
So, initially, what we wanted to do, you would remember that this happened we had a previous administration, and with the new administration, we were looking at what our role in the GNU is going to be. And part of why the Expropriation Act was a red line item in our conversations as far as our statement of intent is concerned was because we're hopeful that we will be able to have an opportunity to clear this out without having to have a political fight about it.
But it's been a few months, right? It's been a few months. So let's really just look at that particular point, because one would then say, yes, it's one thing to wait for what you're going to do in the GNU, but if you're arguing procedure, that should have been an issue you take to court as a matter of urgency, even by not getting to this particular point when it's been signed into law, and only now you speak about procedure.
I think, Ozbongi, that's a fair point that you're making. And our argument to that would be, our request has always been to the President to take it back to Parliament. We didn't imagine that the president would not heed the logic of that, to say, let's take it back to Parliament, let's fix it, not only because of the procedural problem that we have, but also because of the constitutional inconsistencies that we have outlined through our DA ministry as far as the legal advice that we received is concerned. So we're only here now simply because, honestly, President Ramaphosa has not been willing to budge. And the reason why he's not willing to budge is because he is an ANC president of the country, while also being president of a political party that has given him an uncompromising mandate as far as his last Congress is concerned, to have expropriation go through come hell or high waters, irrespective of what the Constitution dictates.
An interesting point, pardon me, Karabo, an interesting point you're raising there. You say he's an ANC president, right? Whether in government or in the party. So it goes back to the dynamics within the GNU, because this has been a question that has been coming up over time, that, what exactly is going on, especially with others who are saying these are teething problems. Others are saying that you've got the clearinghouse mechanism that simply has not even adopted the terms of reference, then we still have a problem there. And then you have others who are saying, but there simply does seem to have to be some serious tensions within the government of national unity. So one asks then, if you're calling him an ANC president, even in government, that's what you're calling him, what does it mean for the GNU?
It means exactly the reason why we had the press conference we had last month calling for the resetting of the dynamics within the GNU. We South Africans deserve a GNU that works, and your question speaks exactly to that things can't continue the way they are, particularly if we vowed to South Africans that we would be able to find common ground and compromises if must, which in this case we could have easily found had the president just heeded the call for the solution that we gave here to get forward. But what must also be true here, Usbongi, and clear for all South Africans to understand here, is that what the government of the day has been tested on is its application of democratic constitutional principles. We have a Section 25 that has a clear protection of property rights on the one hand, while on the other hand having a clear mandate to heal the injustices of the past, to roll out land reform, redress and restitution. You can't compromise one in the sake of the other. You must be able to maintain a clear balance on both, and it is on the basis of that we as the Democratic Alliance are having a challenge of the Expropriation Act in court.
Quite interesting, because you do have a view by others who are saying that, in fact, the Act does seek to protect some of the property owners. But let's put that aside for a second. I want us to look at the developments around the, just this very Act and how it's, again, caught the attention of the U.S. We then saw that executive order at the weekend, and we've seen a number of, parties reacting to that particular executive order, listening to AfriForum speak as well. And then you go back to a conversation in December that Helen Zille, one of your leaders, had with Clement Manyathela, where she was talking about the fact that she has just returned from the US in London, where she was speaking to a key Trump advisor, and a lot of people, of course, drawing inferences to where we are finding ourselves now. One then would ask, does the DA take any responsibility at all to where South Africa finds itself when it comes to drawing the ire of the US right now?
The responsibility is 100% the ANC's failure to align foreign policy in accordance with the ultimate goal that we want as a country, which is to grow our economy and create jobs for all South Africans, poor South Africans who depend on working trade partnerships to get those works, partnerships such as that of AGOA. And it is, I think Helen Zille was prophetic, for a lack of a better expression, enough to also know that this is a culmination of a series of conversations that have gone broken as far as the Trump administration, as far as the American administration and the South African government is concerned, to find each other as far as foreign policy is concerned. So these are things that we must be able to have an overview, a helicopter overview of when discussing these things. Because quite frankly, there have been differing conversations about the terms and conditions of doing business in South Africa, where versus the benefit that the South African economy can receive as far as investment is concerned, as far as maximizing business opportunities for job creation are concerned. So we shouldn't look at these things as an isolation. And And the only people who have been in government long enough to have to bear the responsibility of where we are right now are the ANC as far as their foreign missions have been concerned. But what must also be true is the holding of Trump's administration accountable as well to a fair assessment of where South Africa is as far as the Expropriation Act is concerned for real. I watched an earlier conversation that you had with the former President Mbeki, who made a clear outline that relationships with South Africa and the US have been one of value. And as the Democratic Alliance, we are still of the view that the US is a valuable trade partner, and we should be able then to see the South African government and the US government find each other so that we can be able to fix our trade partnership, so that we can invest in our economy, grow it, and create jobs for millions of South Africans who depend on that economy to put food on the table for themselves and their families.
All right, Karabo, thank you so much for your time this evening. I appreciate it. Certainly, let's see what happens in the coming days around this particular issue. That's Karabo Khakhau, the DA spokesperson.